Do you want a man for president who's seasoned through and through? The night's so doggone seasoned that he won't try something new. A man who's old enough to know
and young enough to do.
Well, it's up to you, it's up to you. It's strictly up to you. But it's Kennedy, 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 Kennedy. Do you want a man with spirit who is not afraid to fight?
A man whose record shows that he will fight for what is right.
A loyal man who'll bring the job a fresh new point of view. Well, it's up to you, it's up to you. It's strictly up to you. Cause it's Kennedy, 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 Kennedy. And do you deny to any man the right he's guaranteed to be elected president, no matter what his creed?
It's promised in the Bill of Rights to which we must be true.
So it's up to you, it's up to you. It's strictly up to you. And it's Kennedy, 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 Kennedy. Do you like a man who answers straight, a man who's always fair? We'll measure him against the others, and when you compare, you cast your vote for Kennedy, and the change that's overdue. So it's up to you, it's up to you, it's strictly up to you. Kennedy, 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 Kennedy,
Welcome from my humble second bedroom here in the Saucon Valley, part of the Lehigh Valley Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, part of these United States, North American continent, Western Hemisphere, on this planet Earth, the only one. We have Third Rock from the Sun in the Terran solar system, part of the Milky Way galaxy. TKE Tonight is live with you. The Kennedy Effect Tonight is live with you for September 11th, 2024. TKE Tonight. We are live. I think I'm on the radio. That's super cool.
Sorry about that.
Now he's mouthing it like he's nice. Nice. Anyway, thank you all for being back with us. We had a special edition of the program last night. I hope you were able to tune in. We hope you enjoyed it. It was a little rough, but then again, it was the first time really that a good percentage of the staff has been together trying to do a program together. Probably should have been a little longer. I think we certainly could have gone on a little longer, but I think that is only the first of many. There's always big events that are happening where we could all be together and talking to each other. And it's also good for those of you who are perhaps regulars to our program who may not know anything about the others, to kind of hear the voices, see the faces, and of course we'll be doing that. I'll be visiting the other shows and the other time slots as well. I think it's good to see everybody and good to get to know them and so on. So I hope you enjoyed our special edition of pre-debate coverage last night. Tonight's program is going to be exclusively debate-oriented. I don't even think I've posted some articles in the Facebook group that we could certainly talk about, but I don't think we will be. There really is only one big story, and that, of course, is the aftermath of the debate. Everything that's come out, everything that happened during it, and everything that came after and continues to come after. We are live right now on my Facebook, Jeff Kennedy, live on our home group Facebook page, That Other Side of Information. We are live on our YouTube channel, which is also called That Other Side of Information. We are live on our Twitch, which is Jeff R in the middle there, Kennedy, and what am I forgetting? Our LinkedIn. How could I forget our LinkedIn? We actually do really quite well on LinkedIn, which is really, as I said to you, probably boring you all to death with this. But we do quite well on our LinkedIn. You get a lot of nice views and reactions and so on from our LinkedIn. So we are live on our LinkedIn as well, which is Jeff Kennedy. And of course, the audio of the program blasting around the globe on gcpr.live. ghostclawproductionsradio.live. Plug any of that into any search engine of your choice, and you will find us. And again, at the risk of being terribly, terribly, terribly repetitive, I am extremely repetitive, by the way, at the risk of being really, really just ridiculously repetitive, we invite you not only just to be part of our program every single night that we're on, but also to continue to share GCPR content everywhere that you can. And I encourage you to please go to the website. Look, it's a very, very simple website. It's actually not, it's going to sound almost like a derogatory, but I don't mean it that way. It's actually not overly laden with content. It's very simple. Schedule, shows, presenters, some bios, info on the shows. It's really simple and easy to use. I hope that you will check it out. GCPR.live. Before I get into all of the debate, I would be remiss at best if I did not mention, or at least passively even mention, that today is 23rd anniversary of the September 11th terrorist attacks. I'm not going to spend a program on it. I just won't. Not because it's not significant, not because not really anything. I mean, it is significant. It forever changed this country, and not in good ways. But we could spend hours talking about the attacks, the mysteries, and some would say conspiracy theories that surround the attacks. Some would say, and then we could also talk about the aftermath of that, and what it did for 2 illegal wars, trillions and trillions of dollars, and lives wasted. If we had just treated it like the criminal act that it was, rather than an act of war. But these are topics for a different day. For today, I hope that we've all taken a minute or two, if not a lot more, to just remember what happened. Regardless of where you think those, well, I can't say we know where the attacks came from. It was Saudi Arabia, but I mean, regardless of what your opinions of the day, the source, the reactions, et cetera, are, let us not forget what happened that day and the 3,000 lives that were lost. Firefighters, police, just office workers, people just trying to make a living and support their families. People that never went home. I can tell you just a couple of stories from that day. It was a gorgeous day, very much like today. Maybe just a twinge less humid, but warm, sunny, barely a cloud in the sky. I was unemployed at the time. I was just working at a gas station, living in New Jersey, pumping gas for cash. And we lived in a lake community in northwest New Jersey. And I remember sitting inside because we didn't have any customers at the time, and feeling a rumbling. And it got stronger and stronger, and it felt like some sort of, I mean, you would think it was an earthquake, except for where we were in New Jersey doesn't suffer earthquakes. And then 2 F-16 fighter jets flew over the lake and over our gas station at maybe at worst 500 feet. And had never seen anything like it. And they were headed toward New York. And just 1 week, I think, before that, I had a job interview at the Trade Center. Well, it was a store that was across the street from the Trade Center, but I mean, for all intent and purposes, if I had gotten the job, I would have been there that day. And I suspect if I had been there that day, I would have survived, because I wasn't in the towers. It would have been a building literally across the street. So I'm sure I would have been fine. Certainly don't want to make anything more of that than it is. But yeah, let's just remember what happened. And let's not forget what happened. as significant, as dreadfully significant as December 7th, 1941 was. Nearly everybody who was, nearly everyone who was associated with it or living in Hawaii at that point, or certainly in the military at that point, are gone. Right? The number of veterans who continue to survive from the Normandy invasion are now, I think, less than 100. And they themselves are all in their upper 90s or more than 100 years old. There's still an awful lot of people around who remember September 11th. And that memory will fade. The importance of the September 11th Museum at Ground Zero is exactly that. I think it's also, it speaks to the importance of the memorials at Pearl Harbor. But we cannot allow ourselves to forget what happened, and we must always remind ourselves and not be afraid to learn the lessons of bad reactions. Wars that followed September 11th were unjustified. They were illegal. They were built on plans that Cheney and the W. Bush administration had to invade Iraq and take the oil. Cheney met with his quote unquote energy commission, refused to ever turn over the notes or anything about the meetings. One thing that did seem to make it out was the map of Iraq, where the major oil companies drew lines on the map and divided up the oil fields. These are discussions for different days, and I could probably do a week's worth of shows, or probably even two. That surround that day and the events of the day and the events following. But today's not the day to get into it. Those are discussions we can save for probably after the election, perhaps. And I also don't want to go down the many rabbit holes, not even one, but really the many rabbit holes of the conspiracy theories and the questions and things that surround September 11th. For today, September 11th itself, let us just take a moment to quietly sit back, remember the day, remember the people that we lost. The only other story I would have for that day, because I don't have a direct connection to it, I can't tell you I was there, I didn't carry somebody down from the 110th floor and save lives, I did nothing of the sort. But the two stories that I do have are the fighter jets flying probably about 500 feet over where I lived at the time, and then there was a friends of ours that lived in a town in Morris County, New Jersey. It had a train station right across from the pub that we used to like to hang out in. And for days after September 11th, seeing the cars sitting there that their owners never came to pick up because they didn't come home that day. And how eventually the town had to tow the cars out of there and move them somewhere else until the families could come and grab them. I mean, those are not the most connected stories in the world, but when you lived in the New York market, if you will, in northern New Jersey, New York City, Long Island, southeastern, southwestern actually, Connecticut, Rockland, Westchester counties, the New York metro area, which, by the way, last I knew, the New York metropolitan area is 44 million people. If you lived there, you couldn't help but be affected by it. It was for months and years after, it was kind of a constant thing. Anytime you went to New York, to Manhattan itself, you see the empty space where the towers were. Still to this day, the skyline does not look the same. Obviously, since the Freedom Tower was built, there's still, there's only one building now where two once stood. And I would just ask that you, if you have not already, say a little prayer for those that we lost and for their families who continue to live with us and will probably for generations. Let's get into the debate from last night. And it's funny, I was thinking to myself, well, this will be easy to talk through an entire hour about the debate. And I find myself actually having less and less thoughts about it because it was as thorough a debate win as I've ever witnessed. This was, look, it wasn't exactly the Lincoln Douglas debate. Let's just be blunt. Okay? It just wasn't. Those debates helped shape the following decades of the country in their immensity, in their gravity, in their seriousness. This wasn't that. But it was as dominating a performance by a debate participant that we've seen, period. And if you are familiar with the program, you will know that I am very self-deprecating. I'm not the smartest guy on the planet, not by a long shot. I'm not better than anybody, smarter than anybody. I love politics and I know a lot about it. I know history and I know a lot about it. But I'm not smarter or better than any of you. My point is, you don't have to be a supporter of the vice president to know just how well she did. You don't need to be a Democrat. You don't need to be a supporter of the vice president. You don't need to be any of those things to know just how well she did. You don't need to be a Trump hater to know how poorly he did, how thoroughly outclassed, out-charactered, the complete lack of substance, the lack of truth, the lack of composure, the lack of intelligence. You don't need to be a Trump hater to pile on all that and say, oh my God, he was terrible. All you had to do was watch. We can debate, no pun intended, we can have a conversation about how many people left in this country are in fact undecided. Some polls will say it's as high as 20%. There are actually more people in the nation that the majority of the nation is registered as either a member of the Democratic Party or a Republican, but there's a size up to 40% of the country is either not registered or not affiliated to a party. They might be independent, which actually is a registration, or they are non-affiliated. The two terms are basically interchangeable. With that said, people who are currently uncommitted in this election, depending on the poll that you look at, could be as high as 20%. Focus groups that were put together by the cable news organizations. In fact, I don't think MSNBC did one. I know News Nation did one. I think Fox did one. Because News Nation, I think, did a room full of Trump supporters. And the majority of that room said, yeah, he got it spanked. He got his butt handed to him. And we're pretty unimpressed and pretty now concerned about his prospects for what is still technically re-election. But you didn't need to be a Trump hater to see that. It was obvious. If you have any objectivity whatsoever, you know it was obvious. Now, I tried very hard to watch Fox and Friends this morning to see what their spin on this would be. As you would expect, they took a very carefully edited, easy for me to say, edited package of clips, did everything they could to highlight what very few things Trump did correctly, and there wasn't many. Quite frankly, I don't think there were any. And tried to package together a series of clips that were unflattering to the vice president, of which there really weren't many. There's a couple word choices that she used that I thought were unnecessary. They weren't incorrect. I just thought they were unnecessary. And of course, they attacked the moderators. Let me just tell you, the two moderators from ABC News, in any normal debate, going back the history of this nation, in any normal debate, when two candidates or multiple candidates, if you were talking about a primary, get together, the moderators have, it is not their job to fact check the candidates. Because in the past, candidates didn't outright lie. They might stretch the truth. They might say, well, we created 1 million jobs when you created 950,000. We rounded up to 1 million. And 1 million sounds like an awful lot more than 950,000. The moderators had to fact check. Had to. Because the sputum that was coming out of Trump's face was so egregious and so ridiculous. Personally, I think they felt honor bound to say something. When Trump was talking about how babies are being born and then executed, and he was reminded, very monotone, I would even say a little bit quiet, the young lady who was the moderator with David Muir, and her name is escaping me at the moment because I don't watch ABC News. Lisa Fields, I think, is her name, but I think I might have that completely wrong. I was going to look it up quick, but then I'll stop talking, and that's not good radio, is it? I don't remember that. I know David Muir is a gentleman. He is the anchor of the ABC World News Tonight, and the young lady that was with him. Again, I'm blanking on her name. I want to say it was Lisa Fields, but I think I might very well have that very wrong. But remember the way that she corrected him. Of course, nowhere in the nation is it legal to execute a child after birth, and then moved straight into the next question. She didn't make a spectacle of herself. She didn't raise her voice. She barely, Lindsay Davis, thank you, George. George is here. He's just not on camera, so I kind of took over the screen. He's here. Don't worry, he's here. When he turns the camera back on, you'll see him. But she corrected him in a very, very mild-mannered way. She didn't make a circus out of it. She didn't stand up, give him a pointed fingers, you lying sack of you-know-what. She let him finish his ridiculous word salad of an answer, and then said, of course, nowhere in the country, I'm butchering the quote, of course, I'm paraphrasing, nowhere in the country is it legal to execute a child after birth. And then immediately turned to VP Harris and asked her a question. In fact, she did it with barely taking a breath and didn't allow him to continue to jump, which of course was a cue to the director and stage people to mute his microphone. And the occasion where David Muir corrected him about the roving bands of pet-eating Jamaicans in Springfield, Ohio, his correction of the ex-president was, I think, nearly equally as muted. When he said, we've seen the story, we contacted officials on the ground in Springfield, none of the local elected officials can corroborate this story. And then tried to move on. Trump is the one that made a circus of it. It is something in Trump's personality, and I'm no psychologist and I don't play one on the radio, that when he is proven wrong, if you stand with him outside in grass and you look down and say it's green, and he insists to you that it's blue, even when presented with every shred of evidence that that grass is green, he tends to double down. He doesn't actually step back and go, you know what, maybe I got that incorrect. Or he doesn't even back up to the point where I should probably research this a bit more. I'm not sure you're correct either, but maybe I should look a little more into it. We can agree to disagree and try to leave it. No, he has to double down and make a scene of it. So then he pushed even further. Mr. Muir corrected him yet again. Debates are structured to have equal amounts of speaking time for each candidate. Trump had more than 5.5 minutes more than Vice President Harris last night. It felt like an hour longer, but it was in fact only about 5.5 minutes. But folks, this debate was over. It was over with the handshake. When the vice president walked across the stage, and she didn't rush, she didn't run, she didn't go out of her way. She casually entered the stage area, walked over to the lectern. He tried so hard to ignore her. And she just stood there, offered her hand, smiled at him and said, welcome, glad you're, I think it was something along the lines of, good to see you, glad you're here, something along those lines. I didn't see any reporting as to the lip reading part of it, and the microphones weren't on to catch any of it. But she did it very gracefully. It was, it wasn't over the top. She did not chase him. She did not grab his hand with both hands. She didn't go in for a hug. She didn't say anything. She didn't try to talk super loud so the microphones could pick it up. She just did a very graceful, classy, good to see you. And then very calmly went back to her lectern. The debate was already over. He had no idea what to do with that. No idea. And he did what he tries to do, which is to grab the hand and pull it in. It's a power move. Body language experts will tell you that. Actually, not lawyers is a word for I'm forgetting the actual term for it. People who teach public speaking, which I have done, and folks who will prep witnesses for trials will talk a lot about body language. Trump always tries to do a power move where he shakes the hand and then tries to pull it in and bring you into him. And he tried, she didn't move. She simply extended the arm further. And this might sound like a ridiculous amount of analysis for something that literally took about 10 seconds, but the tone of the debate was already set. And for him, it was all downhill from there. You'll notice that his first couple of questions, he was relatively calm, speaking in a very clear, lower tone of voice. But every time she answered something, and any time that she addressed him directly by turning and looking to him, or directly quoting something that he has said over these past 9 years, 10 years, which only feels like 100, he got more and more agitated. He did begin to physically start to turn red. Because the color orange, if you add a little more, it eventually turns red. Kind of went from orange to blood orange, if you will. And then as George rightfully mentions, he really went over the top when she attacked him on the crowds and the rallies. Vice President made a very concerted effort last night to appeal to every American, from the most diehard cultist to the most progressive Democrat, by saying repeatedly, I am running for this position to represent you, all of you, to be the president for all the people. And I think that may have been most demonstrated by her looking dead into the camera, and I'll get to that in a second, and saying, if you've never been to a Trump rally, I invite you to attend, because you've never seen anything like it. The rambling streams of consciousness, the lying, and then you start to see people get up and leave because they're bored out to tears. And they begin to realize that the verbal abuse that's coming at them is just ridiculous. My words, not hers. I'm not quoting her, obviously. And that's when he really went over the edge. Then the screaming started. Then the arms out to the end of the lectern. The shoulders come up to the neck. The face literally begins to turn red. Trump never made eye contact with her the entire night. When he was answering questions, he did occasionally look in her direction, but not long enough to make eye contact. He pointed at her. He generally fixed his eyes on the moderators. Vice President did an excellent job. This is an actual debate skill. It's different than giving a speech. When you give a speech, you want to make eye contact with the audience, especially if you're up on a stage, if you have teleprompter windows, or if you're just reading from the paper, or reading, well, now we read off of tablets. It just showed how old I was, flipping pages and reading off of papers. But that said, when you give a speech, you want to make eye contact with the audience. That's partly why teleprompters were created, because the speaker gets to consistently look to the left, look to the center, look to the right, and at least give the appearance that you're making eye contact with the people in front of you. In a small room, where you have just a mic, maybe no lectern, or maybe you're standing up on, the old-fashioned days on your soapbox. That's where we get the saying from. And you might have note cards that you glance at occasionally, but you make eye contact with the people that you're speaking to. In a debate, especially a televised debate, and I have been part of those as well, you need to look at three things: your opponent, the moderators, and dead into the camera, so that the American people, or whomever is watching at that point, feel that you're talking to them. She did it excellently. It was a perfect mix of when to look and address him, which he did, of course, look down at the lectern when she was doing it. And I'm sure in his peripheral vision you could see her. She spoke to the moderators when appropriate, and the rest of the time she spoke to us. And by the way, she spoke to all of us. She made an outright appeal to MAGA Republicans. You may not like me, you may not agree with me. When I'm elected, I will fight for you as much as I will fight for anybody. It was a nearly flawless debate performance. It was probably, in the old gymnastics scoring, it was a 9+ for sure. I don't think it was a 10, but it was a 9+. But you also learned from this debate, if there's any kids out there watching, if there are, I hope there are, to be honest. But if there are any kids out there watching or listening, if you're working on your homework or you're sitting with your parents or wherever you might be doing, what the vice president showed you last night is the value of preparation and practice. She could not have been more prepared. In politics, in public speaking, in debating, you can be over practiced and over prepared. There must be space in there for individuality, for ad-libbing, for reacting, for clarification. You can only be so scripted. You can be too scripted. She was none of that. She had a complete command of the facts. She had excellent contact with the camera. She was relaxed, authoritative, nowhere near being the quote-unquote angry black woman. Not even close. She was the prosecutor. While she did not ask Trump a lot of questions, and the debate format did not allow for direct questioning, she asked questions of Trump, of the people around him, of his administration, of his record, kind of out into the ether. All of which bothered him immensely. The only leader that Trump could mention that has endorsed him is the dictator of Hungary, Viktor Orban. That says something. Even though Putin helped elect Trump in 2016, is in his head, and I happen to believe owns a bit of a chunk of him, even Putin hasn't endorsed him. He refused to answer the question, Do you want to see Ukraine win this war? How will you end this war? You say you'll end it before you even take the oath of office. How? I'll end it. It's like answering a question with a question. Meanwhile, the vice president made the case again. A case that is extremely obvious, by the way. I support Ukraine. They must win this war. They are willing to fight. We must give them every bit of aid we can give them. If Ukraine falls, more nations will be next. It's the Ukrainians that are fighting to prevent another world war rather than starting it. Again, more my words than hers. She rightly called him out for his felony convictions. She asked, how can you be patriotic when you tried to overthrow the government? He caught himself, twisted his tongue into knots, twisted his body into knots, twisted a word salad, the likes of which you've not probably seen, which is actually a very Trumpian thing to say, twisting himself, contorted himself in some very unnatural body positions, trying to thread the needle on abortion. And her rebuttal to that was devastating to him. I returned it to the states the way everybody wanted. Nobody wanted it. Even a plurality of Republicans support a woman's right to autonomy over her own body. Even Republicans who are repulsed at the thought of abortion. A plurality of them still think that the government should stay the hell out of it. As Governor Walz has said, mind your own damn business. Remember way back when Republicans used to be the party of personal liberty and personal freedom and personal responsibility and keep the government out of my bedroom? This current corporate fascist Trumpian party, if you want to call it a party, cult, you will live how we tell you to live. Oh, and by the way, if we change our minds from one day to the next on how that should be, you better keep up. We will tell you how to live. What health care you can and can't have, what kind of jobs you can and can't have, what kind of money you can earn, where you can live and not live. I don't like using sports analogies. I don't like using war analogies when it comes to politics. Politics is not a sport. It's not a game. It's too damn serious for that. It's entirely too serious. It's not a sport. It's not American Idol. It's not a game. In political terms, purely political terms, that was about as thorough a beatdown as you're ever going to see. I did not watch the entire debate. I tried to go to bed. I did end up listening to the end of it, and I started to listen to some of the post-debate analysis. And thank goodness eventually fell asleep and got some sleep. But I'm just curious how you could have any sense of impartiality and not think that she wasn't brilliant. And some of the ladies, Donna will probably yell at me for this. because women do have to live up to a different standard than men. They just do. From her hair to face makeup to the suit that she wore, everything was absolutely perfect. And again, her debate performance was not completely perfect. At one point, she fired back at Trump saying, "Your former generals called you a disgrace." Well, she's right. They did. They did. I wouldn't have used that word. I instead would have referenced the 44, 43, 47? 43 or 44 former cabinet officials in the Trump administration who have gone on record as saying he is unfit to return to the White House. I would have instead referenced that. Now, she was right. It's out there. It's easily searchable. Some of the generals that served under Trump said he was a flat-out disgrace. That's their word. They quoted that way. Something about when she said it, it sounded a little sour. And it sounded like one of those words that might put some people off. I instead would have referenced 44 of your own cabinet officials, people who served in your administration, have come out and said you are unfit for office. Your people, you put them there. They work with you. They know you. And they think you're unfit. And they're supporting me. I would have thrown that out there. It's more than 24. It's in the 40s now. He denied Project 2025 again. Let me remind you that dozens of former Trump administration officials helped author the 912-page report. No, 946 pages or something like that report, paid for by the Heritage Foundation. Of course, he threw the Heritage Foundation under the bus last night, too. He goes, "That's not me. I don't know anything about. That's the Heritage Foundation." Well, he tried to distance himself from it. How do you distance yourself from a plan, a manifesto that dozens of your former administration officials wrote, and that your name appears in it 300 plus times? On average, every 3 pages, your name is in it. And here's the zinger that the vice president did in fact miss. There was a bit of a back and forth about who had a plan. Vice president, of course, and all candidates will say this, by the way, because a debate doesn't allow you the kind of time to really lay out the details of a plan. So she spoke in very general terms. I think maybe a slight bit too general. She did talk about an additional $6,000 tax cut for parents for their children in the first year, in addition to the already existing child tax cut, an additional $6,000. She talked about the $50,000 tax credit for people starting a new business. But there were other items where I have a plan for, I have a plan for, I have a plan for. And he said, "You have no plan. I have a plan." And then, of course, there's what will now be, I think what will go in history is an infamous sort of exchange between Trump and David Muir when he pushed him on the plan, and Trump eventually admitted, "I have a concept of a plan. I have a concept of what it would be like to win the Mega Millions, but I don't have the money. And I actually didn't buy a ticket. I have a concept of what that might look like." The zinger that she missed, and I was waiting for it, and she was doing so perfectly well, I was waiting for it. Was for her to look into the camera and say, Mr. Trump is correct. He does have a plan. It's called Project 2025. His name's in it 300 times. And then rattle off about 5 things that Project 2025 does. Eliminates taxes on rich people, on big corporations, shuts down the departments of energy, education, health and human services, the FDA. That's what it does. He does have a plan. It's 900 plus pages. It's a long read. It's a long read. But he does have a plan because his name's in it and because his people wrote it. That's his plan. His plan is to end the American experiment. His plan is to decimate the federal government and, for all intent and purpose, end it. That's his plan. It was a pretty obvious zinger, and it was sitting right there. The ball was on the tee. She had the bat in her hand. After I just said that I don't like sports analogies with politics, here I go making a long one. But I'm telling you, other than that, she was brilliant. I have asked this question before. This is a topic that Kristen and I talk about often. If this Kamala Harris, the one we're witnessing right now, the Democratic nominee for president, the current vice president of the United States, if this Kamala Harris was the same Kamala Harris that ran, well, wait, I'm saying this in the way she is now, if that's how she was 4 years ago, she'd be running for re-election. And the only thing that I can attribute that to is 4 more years of age and wisdom. And not age in a bad way. I mean age as far as experience, learning things, learning new things, traveling the world, fulfilling her duty as president of the Senate. And if what she has said is true, and I believe it to be true, if what President Biden has said is true, and I believe it to be true, and if what multiple media outlets have reported, that she and he have worked this close together, and he deserves an awful lot of credit for her development, for her personal growth. And that's not a slight against the Kamala Harris from 4 years ago. I'm simply saying that if the Kamala Harris of 2024 was running in 2020, she might very well, in fact, I'm almost certain, she might be running for re-election instead of a first term. She has grown that much. She's that good. We've only got about 5 minutes left. I don't see a ton of comments, actually, which is kind of interesting. Randall says Vice President Harris was brilliant in not only her delivery against Trump, but very brilliant in how she baited Trump into going off policy delivery into his insanity of vanity. You made a run, and I'm always right about. Yeah, she did bait him into. She baited him into a lot. She truly did. Jonquia, and I hope I'm saying that correct. Gosh, I hope I'm saying that right. You can yell at me if I'm not. And that Trump kind of looked like Grumpy Cat. You're not kidding. He sure did. But it was that good. It really, really was. It was that good. And I don't want to overblow this, I but I do think it's significant. I don't think it's going to ultimately be the thing that decides this election, but I do think it's a factor, and I think it's worth mentioning. The Instagram post / endorsement from Taylor Swift following the debate is to borrow some letters, an acronym from President Biden, is a BFD. It really is. Within minutes after she posted it, it had been liked 1 million times. She has 248, I think it is, million followers on Instagram. There's 330 million people in the country. And that's not to say that all 248 of them are Americans, by the way. But she's got, nearly 250 million followers. And the beauty of her endorsement is this. It's intelligent and it's mature. And it's very, very fact-based. What did she say in that? Not just, hey, follow me and be cool and vote for, and oh, by the way, buy my merch. She said, I have done my research. I watched the debate. And now I am convinced that this is the right thing to do. It's a mature, beautifully written, well thought out endorsement. And Randall is right. She had 275,000 new young voters sign up at vote.gov in less than 20. Why am I not just putting this on the screen? That's kind of stupid. He's right. She has also, at domestic appearances, her tour, I think, is still actually outside the country, but when she does appearances in the States, she does, on a regular basis, voter registration tables. You can register to vote at a Taylor Swift concert. I don't think we give her enough credit for being as smart as she is. Everybody went crazy gaga, not Lady Gaga, when Oprah spoke at the convention. Oh, it's Oprah. Yeah, whatever. For me, whatever. You're a mega multi-billionaire. You want to solve some things in the country? Write a check. But Taylor Swift is different because her audience are teens, tweens, young adults. She's, I think, 30 or 31 now. She hit the scene when she was 16 or 18. Her first generation of fans are now of voting age. And she just told them, she told them, not only am I voting for Vice President Harris, I'm voting for her after I did my research. I watched the debate. It is a terribly intelligent endorsement. Not self-serving, by the way, in my opinion. Very, very intelligent. I did my research. I watched the debate. Do I think it's going to be the thing that puts Vice President Harris over the top? No. More times than not, endorsements, either by political officials or celebrities or sports figures, don't usually mean much. This one does, because of just the massive appeal of this young lady. And by the way, how smart and shrewd she has proven herself to be. By not orchestrating, that's not the right word. By leading, guiding, being the face in front of her own career. So That's pretty much everything. I know there's already been talk about a second debate. Trump already poo-pooed some of that today by saying, I don't think it'll happen. I told you that this would be the only debate. I happen to stick by that. I'm wrong a lot. I wouldn't exactly bet my house on it because I'd like to continue to have somewhere to live in case I'm wrong. I happen to think it'll be the only one because he got his ass handed to him and he can't risk it again. He just can't. In fact, because if they do happen to agree to a second debate, I have to think the rules will be the same or extremely similar. To be honest, if I was Vice President Harris, I'm not sure I'd want another debate. That's a pretty rough performance to duplicate. I think she's beyond capable of it. But boy, that one was, like I said, it may have not been a perfect game, but it was a no-hitter. After I just bitched about sports analogies, I'm doing nothing but using them. Something has misfired up here. Donna asked at the very beginning of the program if I was okay. First off, no, I'm not. I have more health it would take me more than an hour just to go through the health issues. And that's just for me. That's not even for Kristen. The two of us together, if you borrowed parts from both, we still wouldn't be able to build a functioning human body. But something no, Don, I'm not okay, but something just misfired up here because I just said, I hate using sports analogies in politics because it's not a game. I've done nothing but that for about 10 minutes. We're running a bit over. Nobody's on after us anyway. It's Wednesday. Yeah. So, but we do need to wrap up. Mike corrects me that she's 34. I didn't know that, actually. I just swore she had just turned 30 not that long ago. But, hey, again, it still doesn't change. Mature. Super, super mature and well thought out post. And that's why it's so influential, because it's smart and intelligent and well thought out. It's not just some random. And the picture, by the way, that she posted with it of her holding a cat, I think is just too damn clever and too hilarious. Lady deserves a lot of credit for being as smart as she is. You have not had anything to say yet, my friend. You were scarfing down some dinner, I think. Good for you.
Yes, I was. I'm sorry.
I did get to scarf. I barely remember what I ate, and I certainly don't remember what it tasted like because I inhaled it so fast. But I'm sure I'll suffer with it later because I think there was some red sauce in there, which is really going to bother me tonight. Everything I eat bothers me. But what did you think of last night? I know we can run over a time. I don't intend to be here till midnight, by the way. I'm entirely too tired. But,
on our
pre-game show?
Yeah, our pregame show.
Because after all, why not bury myself in sports analogies after I just pissed all over them? Sure.
There you go. Yeah, I said that if she sticks to the script and she sticks to her gun, like if she sticks to her guns and she doesn't get baited by him, she'll be all right. And she was, and she basically baited him. And I was like, nice. I was like, that. I looked at that.
Would you agree with me, though, that, like you said, if she sticks to the script, I have no doubt in my mind that many of those answers were, in fact, scripted and thought out. And because they were not allowed to have notes in front of them. They were allowed to have an empty pad or blank.
Yeah, I mean, they basically did that in pre-debate prep. That's what they probably did.
Would you agree with me, though, that as well scripted or structured as some of those answers were, they also sounded and looked really quite natural?
Right.
Like she was speaking extemporaneously instead of just, here's my, I'm actually closing my eyes and I'm thinking like, okay, answer 1, 2, 3 points. And I go through and I check the boxes and, It seemed way more natural to me than that.
Yeah.
And I did see a couple still shots, I guess we would say screenshots, of Mike. That's funny. Trump demands to see Taylor Swift's birth certificate. Hey, she's exactly the kind of person he likes. Young, let's just be blunt, sexy, white and blonde, exactly like he likes. Probably reminds her of her daughter. But that said, I lost where I was going. Oh no, I saw some screenshots. I mean, he looked like somebody dropped NyQuil in the tea. I mean, he looked like he was going to not fall asleep, but just looked like he was having trouble concentrating on what he was doing. His eyes actually did. He was squinting the whole night. I don't know what that's about either.
It could be the cocaine or the Adderall.
Well, let's remember, more than one former Apprentice contestant has been very clear that he knows his way around a razor blade and a straw.
Yeah.
And that he does take Adderall. And then you add that onto the fact that, by his own admission, by the way, all he eats is McDonald's and drinks Diet Coke. But
well, as Jonquia said in the chat, at one point she almost cursed at him, and I was like, it's coming, and all of a sudden it was like she like deflected, and she went back to what she was saying. Like, she was gonna. I think she was gonna say the F word, and all of a sudden I was like, and Len and I were watching it, and we were like going, oh. I went, oh, okay. that wouldn't have been like too presidential, but it kind of reminded me of the 2020 debate with Biden and Trump. Like when Biden was looking at the camera, and Trump was just spouting on, just going on, and Biden is going, just shut up, man. Just,
he stopped. He stopped and looked at them and said, will you just shut up, man? And I got to be honest with you, I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
But Biden caught himself.
This was another
and basically, had respected, I guess, his office because he was still president.
I don't know.
At that point.
But funny that Biden should respect the office that Trump didn't, even when Trump was in it. But
true.
The only other thing I would say that she missed on, and she didn't miss, my personal take is just a different approach. After he was done spouting off about the Jamaicans running loose, abducting dogs and cats for food in Springfield, Ohio, this was during the split screen. And you see her look at him and go, what? She audibly said, what? And starts giggling. Now, I think the giggling was probably a practiced, canned decision by the campaign. If you don't know what else to do, smile. And they did turn back to her, and she started talking about, she decided to use the rebuttal time to say, this is the kind of stuff that I think most Americans are sick of. It divides us, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Here's what myself, what I would have done. And I can only ask you all out there to believe me when I say, because I thought of it, I said it to Kristen at the time. If I was her, I would have kind of put one hand on the lectern, turned toward him. I would have waited about 5 seconds in silence and just said, what the hell was that? What was that? You're running for president of the United States. What kind of ludicrous stream of consciousness was that? And then turn back the camera and say, is this election is about who we want to be as a country? Is that what we want to be? That? Whatever that was? Is that what we want to be? I do happen to think, you've heard me say this on the program a billion times, candidates must not be afraid to challenge voters and challenge the public to think. Imagine the power, the vice president looking into the camera and saying, is that who we are? Is that what we want? Now, sadly, a sizable percentage of the country is that. Trump knew that's who we are. He unleashed it. Because it's who he is. But then we have to be, as Democratic candidates for office across this country and for every office, we must not be afraid to look the American people in the face and say, are you no better than that? Is that all you deserve? Don't you deserve better than that, than whatever that was? Now, she chose a different tact. And by the way, it worked. And it landed. And it made him even more nuts. But we have to, as Democratic candidates for office, we cannot be afraid to challenge the people that we're speaking to push them, to nudge them, to think. Is that what you want? Folks, America. Or if George and I were on a street corner and I was knocking door to door and he was the one potential constituent that I was trying to reach. Are you no better than that? Like I said, she chose a different path. And it worked. There was no screw up. There was no big faux pas. She wasn't wrong. Certainly not trying to say she was wrong. I'm simply saying I would have chosen a different way. I think I would have just stared at him with some sort of look of like puzzlement and just said, what was that? Ask people to think. We have to ask people to think. And it doesn't mean that even if they think, they're going to come to the conclusion that we believe they should come to. But dear God, so much of Trumpism is based on the lack of thought, the lack of fact, the lack of truth, the lack of record examination. I like him. Okay. Okay. I like certain guys that play baseball, but they're bloody awful. They seem like certain nice guys. They look good in the uniform. They're supposedly great in the clubhouse, great team guys. And then they play. And you realize they kind of suck. So what happens? You put a different player in. So much of Trumpism is based on not just thinking, but a lack of thinking. One theme that the vice president has used that she is completely correct about. And the people that are surrounding her, you have Clinton people, you have Obama people, you have Biden people. She had to put together a campaign in a damn hurry. She threw out a super wide net and brought in every name she could think of. David Plouffe is a senior campaign advisor. He ran Obama's 2008 campaign. Adrian Axelrod, who was working on the Biden campaign. You have, God, there's more people than I can even think. She's got some Clinton advisors in there. She got every big Democratic name within the last probably 3 or 4 presidential cycles. And the campaign has been absolutely perfect to this point. She has not had a slip. And maybe what I'm saying then makes no sense. Because why if it ain't broke, right? But there is still a measurable percentage of the voting public that at least is saying to the pollsters they are undecided. And there's nothing wrong with going to those undecided voters or the waffling Republicans who say, well, we can't stand Trump, but I don't like Democrats, and say, is that it? Is this enough for you? One thing I do think she said last night, she did not say it in these exact words. I am adding to this a tiny bit. She did say that she is running to be a president that will use the levers and power of government to better the lives of the citizens of this country, which is what government is supposed to do. There is a very old-fashioned fundamental debate between the two quote-unquote parties. There's only one party left, we know that, but a very old-fashioned debate about the role of government is playing out in this election. It is not forward. It's not on the front foot. I don't think most people think that this discussion is happening, but it is. And it is the very traditional, if you will. I lost George. I think somebody lost their internet. That's all right. I need to wrap up anyway. But there is a fundamental debate. It's a quiet debate. It's a little bit shadowed. It's a little bit nuanced. It is the oldest debate between Democrats and, well, Republicans didn't exist at the beginning of the Federalists. You know, the Republicans didn't exist at the beginning of at the onset of the Republic of the United States, but it's been one of the fundamental differences between the two parties since its inception, since the nation's inception. Democrats have always believed that government can do anything that the Constitution says. I'm mixing up my words. Republicans have always felt that government can only do specifically what the Constitution says. And that if it doesn't say it in the federal Constitution, then it's up to the states or to private industry. Democrats have traditionally felt the Constitution does not say we cannot do this, therefore we can. There has been a fundamental difference between Republicans and Democrats about the power, scope, and role of the central government. And that goes back to a time where Democrats and Republicans, generally speaking, agreed about where we wanted to go, but disagreed on how to get there. This argument is playing out in this election. It is. It's playing out in this election. Trump and Republicans want to dismantle government until there's just enough of it left that they can make a hell of a lot of money from it. The rest of it can go to private corporations so they can make a hell of a lot of money. Vice President Harris is saying, I'm going to use the power of government for the express purpose of expanding opportunity, rebuilding the middle class, and bettering the lives of the people that live here. Those are very, very fundamental differences. All right, quick show announcement. Next week, we will not be here with you for most of the week. Kristen and I will be on the road. We are actually going to Washington, D.C. I will try to do maybe some TikTok videos or something from D.C. I very much underutilize my TikTok. I don't exactly have a hell of a lot of followers, to be honest with you. But I should do it. Send you a few reports from. Oh, George lost power. That's why he dropped out. How the hell did they lose power? It's a beautiful night. I don't know if he's still listening on the GCPR app, but crikey, it's perfect outside. How the hell do you lose power? If somebody hit a pole or something, but I don't know that. I'm just speculating. Regardless, Kristen and I will actually literally be in Washington, D.C., lobbying and meeting, going to a conference and so on, speaking to lawmakers about education funding. I think it's education funding. She sent to reading too. She sent to study. Do that work. Let me see. Yeah, I do. I think it's on education. Anyway, bottom line is we will be in DC. So I will not be with you Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday of next week. We will be here tomorrow night from 8 p.m. Off day Friday, off day Saturday. We return Sunday from 6 p.m. for our 3-hour show. No Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. However, I am working on something that we should be doing here at GCPR is guest hosts. We really shouldn't have any programs that aren't on. So I'm going to be opening up to the rest of the team to see who might want to be guest host for me for next week. And then I will be here next Thursday. So going to be change up schedule, but that's okay. Mike says it's so on brand that you are going to DC to argue. I didn't say I was going to argue. I'm probably going to argue. I didn't say I was going to argue. I probably will. One thing I will do is that anybody who's willing to take a business card from me, I will invite them on this program. House members, senators, I don't care where they're from, and I don't care which side of the aisle. If they're willing to take a card and hear me out, I'll invite them. We do have some congressional candidates that will be coming on the program as the election cycle winds down. Please let me remind all of you that we are open to candidates for state level offices, federal level office, anywhere in the country, any side of the aisle. No, I'm not taking third party candidates on this particular cycle. This is too damn important to screw around with green parties and everything else. This isn't the time. It's too damn important. If you find yourself, I can't vote for Trump, but I'm not a Democrat, I don't agree with her, you know what? Vote for her anyway. I guarantee you, you and she agree on a hell of a lot more things than you might think. We don't agree on everything. We probably agree on most things. Even if you don't support one single policy position that Vice President Harris has talked about, I think you might still want to vote. So let's do that. Let's do that. Mike would like to guest host with Randall. You probably could do more than 20 minutes of comedy, I would say, though. Probably more. Probably more. I didn't say I was letting listeners guest host. I just said that I think it's time for us, as you know, normally when I can't do the show, there's no show. And I think it's time that we try to evolve beyond that. So that's my only point. Anyway, we've done about all the damage we can do for everybody at Oh, I forgot a really important thing, and I didn't say it the whole damn. An hour and a half from now, 11 p.m. Eastern Time, T. Nathan comes up on gcpr.live. Conversations with T. Nathan from 11 p.m. Eastern, 10 Central, 8 Pacific. Yes, I had to do the math in my head. That's why I looked up. Anybody ever hear the old joke that all the answers are up here? That's why everybody looks up when they're trying to think of an answer. T. Nathan from 11 p.m., 10 Central, 8 Pacific. Conversations with T. Nathan. And then the broadcast day starts over again tomorrow morning from 8 a.m. with Thomas the Villain, Thomas Bishop, Sound of Coffee, 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. We return to you in about 22 and a half hours from now. For everybody at GCPR, T. Nathan, Thomas, Gilbert, Gambit, Gretchen, Solid Blue Sister, Bob Kosh, Pastor Best, Cole Goodman. I think that's everybody. Ben and Brett. Sorry, guys. That's everybody. Now I think I got it. For everybody that surrounds TKE tonight and the Kennedy Effect, that's George and Lynn, Kristen, and Daisy the dog downstairs, and of course, for April Riddick. This is Jeff Kennedy. Please, until tomorrow night from 8, take care of yourselves and each other. Stick around for T. Nathan 11. Thomas in the morning. We'll see you tomorrow night. Please take care of yourselves and each other. Apologies to Randall for the phone, but I gotta get the hell out of here. I'm gonna drop. I love you guys. Thank you very much. I will open the phones tomorrow. Please be patient. I appreciate you. And please spread the word. GCPR.live. Thanks so much. Have a wonderful, wonderful night. Listen in for T. Nathan.